Aren't we live?
Man, I think Olivia, we have successfully on time in the right group on the right broadcast. We've got it figured out. So if anybody out there wants to know how to use the software Be Live TV and do a Facebook Live,
yep,
Olivia and I got it down.
That's right. We'll host some tutorials on the potential snags you may encounter when trying to use Be Live.
That's right. We've been through all of them, I think. Their support was great. I talked to this wonderful lady named Julie here before we got started, and she made sure everything was smooth. I changed some things on Facebook, and I think we're in good shape. So anyway,
awesome.
Well, we got to pay attention to this gentleman here in the bottom of the screen who is
he's hiding.
Who is someone that is, I think most of our community probably knows Brent Kelly to some extent. Brent, what's going on today?
Well, first of all, I'm glad I could help you guys get through the technology. I walked you step by step.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we need that help.
No, I didn't, obviously. But no, things are good. Thanks for allowing me to be part of your chat. It's been good. I actually got to see you, Landon, just a couple weeks ago, live and in person, and
we were in the flesh, real life, having dinner together. We were in Greensboro, weren't we? We were in Greensboro. So Winston-Salem.
We were in Winston-Salem. Yeah, I can't remember either, but yes.
My state. I don't even know where I was.
It's your state. I was just visiting, so you should know where I was. Thank you.
Honestly, Greensboro, Winston-Salem is all an area called the Triad, and if you're from there, and there's some people out there probably watching that are going to hit me up later and say, how could you get that wrong? But honestly, it's all just one. Same with Raleigh, Durham, and all that.
The triangle, right? The Triad.
Exactly.
You guys are big into like threes out there or something. I don't know.
It sounds very gangster, though. The Triad.
The Triad. Yep. The Triangle.
Yeah.
Yep.
South Carolina,
and then,
known for its.
I'm in the Sand Hills. We all have this thing in North Carolina, by the way, especially where I'm from. The people down here are from a county. So if you say, "Where are you from?" they're going to say, "I'm from Hope County. I'm from Robinson County." It's not the city; it's the county. It's very strange. It's a new thing for me. I'm still working through it.
So last week, you and Tracy are how far apart? Like. Distance-wise, are you guys?
So Tracy Cotton is in the Hendersonville area, so that's probably 4 hours from me. Yeah.
So geographically, Brent and I are actually closer.
No kidding.
Yeah, we're probably just 2.5 hours from each other. I would bet.
Yeah, that's about right. We're true Midwesterners.
Yeah. Yep,
which means we have warm hearts for others, and we say funny things. So outside of that, I don't know what else, but we are close.
Warm hearts and cold hands. At least
so good. So well said.
That is great. Well, listen, I think we should officially get this started. I gave us a little bit of time here to get things going. What I'm going to do this week, we teased it last week with Tracy, but what I'd like to do is anybody that's out there watching. I'd love to get you all to jump in here and spend a few minutes with us. I'm not going to keep you in here for long. Maybe, just a couple of minutes, ask your popcorn question to Brent, and we're going to kick you out. But I really want to involve some other folks. So I'm going to go ahead and get in here and post it on the stream. And last week with Tracy, but hang on, let me get in the right spot. Technical difficulties.
Oh, I didn't train you in this area, so that's okay.
This is a new thing.
We didn't test it out.
But anyway, there we go. I just dropped the link.
There it is.
In the Facebook chat, so we should be able to get rolling. So Brent, you're with the Sitkins group. I know most of our folks know you and know what you do and stuff like that. But if you were to break down for us, the top 3 things that you do on a daily basis, what would those top 3 things be?
Ooh, good question. I can answer this one because I have it in my kind of daily thing overall of how I want to track myself. So 3 main things I do. I would say I prepare and deliver content to agencies primarily and producers in some cases in different groups. So that's a big part of my week. I connect with people just like this. This would be a connection, right? So I'll be doing interviews and different things, podcasts and all that. And then I coach. So that's the biggest part. I coach agencies across the country. We have a private client network. We work very closely with agencies and just holistically. I spend a lot of time on sales leadership and sales in general, but it really all comes together with conjunction with the high performance teams and all that. So it would be content, connections, relationship building, and coaching.
And what do you have like so we know, I know a large part of what you do, I mean, obviously those three, but the coaching aspect of it, I mean, do you all have you coached agencies of all sizes and shapes, or do you have a specific market that you focus on there?
That's a good question. So our group, it ranges. So I'll answer in two ways. We do a producer camp, which is probably our most popular thing. We've got a producer program. And that program, we have agencies and producers that come from all shapes and sizes.
So they come to you.
Yeah. So our producer camp typically is held in Florida. We're going to move it around this year a little bit, maybe have one in Chicago, maybe one on the West Coast, just to make it easier for people. There are 2 live sessions and 2 online sessions. So there are 4 sessions total as part of our camp. It goes about 4 or 5 months as a stretch that we work with producers. So that is kind of all over the map. Our private client groups, and we coach agencies. Right now, our agency, and we look at everything in revenue, not premium. So, and you hear me talk about it. And one of the things that we often share is that we always say companies eat premium, agencies eat commission and revenue. Yep. And so there's a distinction there. And I think I do see this, and this isn't to pick on smaller agencies, but oftentimes I'll have people go, oh, we're a $3 million shop. I'm like, okay, well, revenue or premium, or $10 million, revenue or premium. Right. And everybody's in a different stage of life. So it's not a judgment. It's just so I know where you're at. But we work with agencies that range right now directly between about $1.5 million in revenue. And we've got several agencies now that are right around 30 million in revenue. Wow. So it ranges. So it's all over the map. But I would say primarily, in general, our agencies probably have 5 at least producers, outside producers, and at least a leader and a sales manager. That's typically who we work best with.
And do you work, I mean, do you, as far as the producers are concerned, are they primarily commercial lines producers, personal lines producers, a mix of all of it? I mean, do you focus on coaching? I feel like, and we've talked about this in previous lives with people on here, I feel like especially in the coaching world, there's a huge emphasis on, raising your standard, becoming a producer, becoming a high achieving producer. And oftentimes that is larger commercial accounts. And I think, a large majority of the agency, if you just looked at the whole agency force that is independent, they may be a bunch of us that are still working in the, let me hit a bunch of singles versus a few, triples and home runs throughout my week. So talk a little bit about that. I mean, is there a focus there that's different for you all?
Yeah, I would say this. So our the agencies and producers we work with, we have them all kinds. And we have commercial lines, we have benefits, we have personal lines. I would say that overall, it depends, because personal lines, again, I mean, actually all of them have such a variety. I mean, commercial, you could work on much bigger accounts of personal lines than if you were doing small commercial. And sometimes, we forget that. I mean, in fact, I would say that high level personal lines is much more like middle market or larger commercial than small commercial. It's not even so true. And so, in fact, one of the things we'll hear out there is, oh, you guys don't like personal lines. No, we don't. It's not that we don't like personal lines. We don't like unprofitable accounts. Yeah. So there's a difference. And so it's not an anti-personal lines. It's, are you writing every single thing that walks into your door? If the answer is yes, my guess is you're probably writing some unprofitable accounts. So we work with all agencies of all different types. We have some agencies that are probably 70 to 80% personal lines. We have some that don't do hardly any personal lines, if at all. So it does depend. Our things aren't all cookie cutter, but primarily it's about working with profitable clients, regardless of what line it is. And so I guess that's more of our focus than just a line of business. If that, I don't know if that answers your question, but
absolutely. That's great. That's great. Olivia, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Throw it over to me. So you spend most of your time in Florida, which I'm a little jealous of, as we sit in a chilly Midwest climate. But when you're doing those, I know you do more than the producer camps. Mm-hmm. So, what else is it that you're doing? But then when it comes to those producer camps, what are some key things that you're emphasizing during those sessions?
So outside of producer camps, we do with our private client community, we do stuff for the service teams. We actually have an account manager program that we do online for account managers and service teams. We do a CEO camp, which is for our leaders. So we'll do high-level strategic planning with agency leaders, and then we do sales management. Those would be the 4 core things that we do: leadership, sales leadership, production, and service, which kind of pretty much takes care of most of an agency. We don't get a lot into, even some of the technological stuff. We help people how to, as far as are you implementing it, but that's not really our game. We don't get a lot into that stuff. I would say the biggest thing, regardless, and this is something that's, being part of Sitkins and working with Roger and the team and just my background too, is that I would say to change the external, you got to change the internal. And so when we work with teams and people, a lot of it, what I find obviously most successful is you can come in and say, here's a cool, shiny process. But we focus a lot on personal and professional growth. What are you going to do to change? And what are you going to commit to? So that's probably a difference. And then your second question, which I just rambled, I forgot what it was, Olivia. It was...
Oh, I actually just asked what it is that you emphasize during those producer camps. Gotcha.
Yeah. And so producer camps, I mean, there are 7 core strategies that we teach and coach around. It's interesting. The very first session that we have, we spend the majority of our time on what is your Me Inc., back to personal development. What's your personal company as part of your agency? What does that look like? What does it need to be? We spend on how you're using your time, which is the only thing you can't get back. So most producers waste an abundance of time, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And then we just spend on starting to talk about looking at the idea of 80-20. And obviously, Landon, you've heard me talk about that, but just looking at your accounts, what am I doing here? And that's kind of foundational to start to say, are there certain areas I need to focus on more? Are there certain areas I need to focus on less? Are there team members that I need to start to communicate better with? Or do I need to find team members so that I can be able to do some of the things that I need to do? Because from the production camp, one of the things that we'll say is that you can't grow your business if you don't find the time to grow. And that's where most producers get stuck. So that's a big part of our first session.
Awesome.
Man, there's so many things. You always come, Brent, with just so many good topics that jump up, especially in the realm of sales. Because for me, still very young in this business. I mean, getting into a solid sales process has been really what I've been focusing on the last couple of years. We primarily play in the mid-size commercial and personal lines. So we're about 60-40. And so, we have a good mix of people. We sort of started going after some personal lines, some personal lines folks, because we wanted to sort of spread out the book a little bit. And so if we lost somebody or lost an account or whatever, it didn't hurt as bad as some of the mid-size accounts would.
Right.
But I'm curious, when you look at, all the travels that you've had and all the concerns that people bring to you, what is the biggest hurdle that smaller, more traditional shops have with getting themselves into a process, a sales process, and a sales strategy for the agency?
Boy, the number one, there are several, but as I was thinking as you're asking that, there's one that kind of jumps off the page for me. And so here's what I'll share, is that this business, this industry, the model is really awesome. I mean, it just is. I mean, I think we talked about that at dinner a few weeks ago. I mean, I jokingly say often from stage is that, with your book of business, you could virtually do nothing with your clients. Nothing. And probably 80% keep doing business with you.
Yep.
Right. So, wow. Thank God for this business, right? I mean, it's pretty cool. And as you know, you do a little bit, you're probably close to 90%. And then of course, it kind of goes from there. So the biggest challenge that I see with agencies that are trying to take the next step, whatever that may be, whether you're a $1 million agency saying, man, someday I'd like to be a 2 or 3, or you're a 3 or 4 and you want to be a this, or again, depending on where you're at, is the fact that I'm going to have to change not just my philosophy, but my actions, which is really, really hard to do. I would say of all the things that I coach and work on is how do I get my team to change, right? Not just a specific process, but even the attitude behind the process. Because for most people, good is good enough. And this is not even to try to be a slight. I don't judge people on it because I get it to a degree. Yeah. But for a lot of, especially agencies out there all over the country, we say this in our producer camp. I mean, even for the semi-successful ones, how many of you are making more money than a lot of your family? And everybody kind of raises their hand. Now, how many are making more money than some of the friends you went to school with? You know, and then we jokingly say, how many are making more money than if you actually had a real job? And they kind of laugh and they're like, you know, I'm busy doing stuff, but I'm doing okay. You know, I've got a house. Not everybody's in this situation. I get it, but I got a house. I've got enough money and I got the cars. I'm okay. So now you're telling me I got to kind of switch my mindset and my actions to do things differently. Why would I want to do that? And I can't answer that for people. It's got to be up to you. But I think, you know, the agencies we work with, the producers we had the most success with, this is not shocking. It's not about the money. It's about the challenge and it's about winning. It's about, you know, our entire focus around our camps are BVP, best version possible. Not what Olivia's doing or not what Landon's doing. What's your best version? And again, I'm sure I shared this from stage somewhere, but it's always impactful. When I heard a few years ago, it still knocks me down. It's the definition of hell on earth is when you get to the end of your life and you meet the person that you could have become. And it's like you can, and just to give you more backstory, I don't mean to ramble on this, but you know, I spent 15 years in commercial lines production. So I jokingly say I'm a recovering insurance producer.
I want to talk to you about that, by the way.
It's in my blood. I was in the game. And the fair question I just address all the time is, well, then why are you doing what you're doing now? Well, my first answer is easy. I love it. I've just, you know, and part of this is, and I will tell you, I was not the world's best producer, never would be. But I do have different skill sets in different ways that I understand a lot of the things around it. And I think I can communicate in a way that's going to help others get to their best version. And I remember as I was kind of having a very difficult decision of walking away from a very nice book of business, a very comfortable lifestyle. I built up, you know, you're starting to build up retirement and your bank account. You're starting to think ahead, and I've got 5 kiddos. And I'm like, this is not for me what I need. There's something else. And I was kind of pursuing that. And I remember my boss, and he was a great guy. But he said, Brent, you're going to give up all this, that you can just kind of coast the rest of your career at this point and have a really great life. And when I heard that, I'm like, I have to leave.
Yeah.
And so that was, you know, that's my path. I was scared sharing that. But you know, it was, and I screwed up. Once I left, I'll tell you, one of the things that I learned very quickly was recurring revenue is a really cool thing. I knew that, but I hadn't felt it until you leave it. You go, wait a second. So now I've got to keep selling more stuff just to eat.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went all over the place there.
No, you know, David Goggins talks about that in several of his interviews. I don't know. He talks about like getting that list of the things that you were supposed to achieve or accomplish, and you just didn't push to your potential or past what you thought your potential was. Like you put that lid on too soon. So that's interesting. I'm just like, I'm staring at my bookshelf, and I was like, oh yeah, there's David Goggins.
That's
right
a great.
You invoke the name of Goggins. That's a big deal right there.
Great book. Great book.
Yes, great book. Yes. So so you made the decision. You made the leap. Left the agency side. So how did you arrive where you are now? Like what did that look like? What was that thought process?
Well, what I'm doing right now, I wouldn't have any capacity imagined that I'd be working with Roger Sitkins and the team and kind of what we're creating and what we're doing. I didn't know. I just knew that for me when I left, and so just to give you a little insight, I left. There was another company with a partner that I started. I was going to do some sales training around that, and that didn't really work out. And I realized that wasn't the right path. And it's you know, one thing that I'll share with anybody. This is a side note, and I learned this. in some ways the hard way, because I mean there's been a lot of challenges. There certainly has not been like, oh, I left and everything was rosy, and like there were a lot of years my wife was like, okay, I agreed to do this. I don't know this was a good decision, right? And so I had to face that as a dad, like, oh my gosh, like did I let down my family? I forgot where I was even going with some of that, but it was like a very difficult decision. And when I did it, again, I did it for the fact I had real conversations. Oh, I was going to say, someone told me after the fact, don't leave someplace, go someplace. And, you know, part of it, and I've had to be really honest with myself, and it's hard to do. You got to, you know, sometimes you get far enough away, you can go, okay, well, I can be a little more honest about some of the things, is the fact that I was just, you know, there were a lot of different things going on in that situation with my agency. And again, all good people, but just, I realized wasn't a good fit. I kind of get to where I was more worried about getting out than what I actually was going to do. Not that I'd have all the plans ready, or I didn't know everything. I was like, okay, I'm going to go be a trainer, speaker, coach guy. That's what I'm going to go do. So I'm going to leave this. I'll figure it out. It'll all work out. Well, it's been a challenge, but I will say this. There was dark days and tough times, but I just kind of kept doing what best that I could do, and learning and growing in the journey. And I always, you know, hear the thing, it's not about the goal, it's about the journey and what you learn in the process. And I think I start looking ahead, or start thinking, I guess, looking ahead and thinking back. I met Roger Sitkins about 2.5 years ago. And part of reason why we connected is because he saw some of the stuff I was doing online and some of my videos, and said, this is intriguing. This might be a person that eventually could be very impactful for our organization. And so we started having conversations, and it went from there. And the lesson I've learned throughout this process is surround yourself with really smart people and shut up and ask questions and listen.
Yeah.
And, you know, Roger's been doing what I'm doing now for 35 years.
Yeah.
And he would be the first to say he's not perfect at it, but boy, he's had a lot of success in it too. And just kind of observing and watching. And, you know, part of it too is people will see me, whether it's on stage or during a coaching call. In some cases, it's like, wow, you know, where did you get that? Well, I realized, like, I don't know, 12 years ago, 6 years ago, 4 years ago, you know, I read a book 2 years ago. I listened to this, I had a conversation. So it just kind of keeps stacking. And it's the same thing with insurance professionals. It's just, right? It just want to keep building that base. And my favorite thought of this is Dave Ramsey has a great one. If I don't hear, listen to Dave Ramsey, a financial guy. People always see me, they see me that I'm this guy, you know, and he's in his, I think, late 60s now, standing on this mountaintop of success. Well, it's not a mountaintop of success, it's a mountaintop of poop. And I'm just standing on it, right? I survived the end. I think that's, you know, I know it's not a very fun thought, but it's true.
No doubt. No doubt. So I want to jump into, you know, you and I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and we got into a little bit, but you had this experience where you were in a room, it might've been in one of your producer camps, I can't remember where it was, where, you know, you were surrounding yourself with, you know, producers that were somewhere in the $500,000 to some crazy $1 million number in revenue generation.
Yeah.
And you said there was definitely things that you could see that separated them from maybe the pack. And so let's go there. What's going on with all that? I mean, I think, like, you know, when people play this back, they're going to be like, this right here is the moment that we've all kind of waited for. I mean, I've been chomping at the bit to ask you about this.
So, and you mentioned, like, we didn't have any script for this, but that was something you want to talk about. And we talked about a few weeks ago. So to give you a little background, one of our programs, I didn't mention this to Olivia earlier, we started this year, is called the Elite 50. So we've had close to 500 people go through our producer camps in the last many years. And we basically, by special invite, said, hey, we're going to create an elite group. It's by application only. It's not for everybody. But those of you that want to be in the room with the best, consider this. And, you know, there's a pretty hefty price tag to it. So people that were there not only are good, but they're committed. And so it was, for me, I mean, yes, I participated. I shared some things. But for the most part, I did what I just said earlier. I said, how did you do this? What did you do here? How did that look like? And I just took notes, right? I mean, it's being in a room of really successful people. And it ranged from, I mean, there were some newer producers who had 150,000 in their first year of revenue. So it was pretty impressive. But majority of them were about $500,000 to our top producer was $3.5 million in commission revenue, right? Just one person. Some agencies like that, right? I mean, and so this is one person. And so I wrote down, there are a lot of lessons, but there are 3 that probably stood at the top. So I'll share all 3 of them if the audience wants to hear that. The first thing that was really interesting, of the best, is they realized, and I've already kind of stated this, they realized it always takes a team to win. And at some point, this goes back to time, you run out of time. And you have to take almost, I'm going to say a step back, but you almost have to kind of go in neutral for a while to say, okay, most successful people don't always ask the question what, they ask who. So it's not just what do I have to do? What do I do here? What do I do? No, it's who would be a person that could help me, right? So that I could be in my best unique ability. The best salespeople, they're great salespeople. They're great relationships. They're great at pipelines. They're very consistent. But they realize that where most producers screw up is they have some of those skill sets, but they spend 50, 60, 70, 80% of their time doing other things.
What are those other things? I mean, I think that's
here's an example. I need a certificate. I have a question.
Okay. So you're talking general service work and handling things. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's service.
So when they're saying, most of those people are asking who can help me, it's I've got customer service representative, account manager, whoever it is in my office that's helping me do these things, and I am able to delegate when that call comes in from somebody that I know well, that I took the time to get to know. I sold them. We have a really good relationship. And I say, John, I need you to talk to Rhonda, because Rhonda's going to be your go-to. She's better at this than I am.
Yeah. So there's so many areas around that, right? Now, it depends on where you're at. If you're a smaller agency, the first thing is, one of the first things is even if you have somebody, most producers don't do a very good job of educating their clients on their team.
Good. Yeah.
What they do is they have the Saku syndrome. And some of that comes from ego. Some of that comes just because they feel like they want to be wanted. Saku stands for source of all knowledge in the universe. And it usually sounds like this. Hey, Landon, thanks so much for being a client of mine. I want to make sure that we are on top of everything that you need. I want to make sure we give you tremendous service. Here's my card. In fact, here's my mobile number. If you need anything, I mean anything, you make sure you give me a call, okay? And then we get frustrated while we're trying to proactively build our business, and we're getting every single little call, email, text, right? And it's not that we don't want to take care of this client. Is if I were to say, hey, Landon, I want to make sure, and if we haven't talked about it, I want to make sure that you get the level of service you need. And just like we're having a conversation right now, there are people that need us for our service. And thank God I have an incredible service team. In fact, Olivia, she's my top person. And so, just like right now we're having a conversation, there are people that are talking to Olivia. So I want to give you a directory of my team. And by the way, my name's at the very bottom, right? Okay. Yeah. And so it's just educating them from the beginning. You tell them what you want them to do, not because you're trying to avoid them. I think there's a series with especially producers when they get started is that if I give them to someone else, I'm not doing my job, or I'm not providing the highest level of service, or they're going to think less of me. No, they won't. They really won't. We see it all the time. It's a fear that's not real. And by the way, if someone does, here's another test. If someone does think that you owe everybody their time, you don't want them as a client.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, there's education part of that. And of course there's communication with your internal team. So if you have a team, it's here's where we're going to go together. Here's what this looks like. Go ahead. I think
so the question is this, we're still on number 1 here, so I don't want to lose our place. But one of the things that I think is interesting is that from my perception, most agencies that have been around a long time probably have this setup in the office where you've got producers, but then you have people that are hired to be in office, account managers and customer service representatives. So it seems to me that number 1 is kind of the foundation that the whole industry sits on, in that you've got your production force and you got your service force. Yep. It's that we don't adhere to our own rules the way we sort of have set this thing up. Is that kind of what you're seeing out there?
I mean, I think philosophically, most agencies would say we have a sales and a service team. Yeah. Right. And I mean, to some degree it's true. But I'll also tell you that if I walk in, and again, every agency is different. And you say, who do you work with? Well, we're going to work with outside producers, right? I mean, you got to be out there having conversations. But if you go on a Tuesday afternoon, where is the producer? It's probably in the office. Wednesday morning, where's the producer? Probably in the office. So, I mean, again, there's different appointments they're doing. What's interesting too is with the high performance team, which is, you're right, is the foundation of things that we teach and preach, is that even in our producer camps, we talk about it. It's so funny, and I don't blame people. It's just funny to observe. Is we'll talk about how much our service team gets interrupted with the flow they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And then the first break that we have after we talk about it, everyone picks up their smartphone. And I mean, they don't all do this, but you'll hear some of them be like, they'll just be like, hey, Brent here, just checking in. What's going on? Need anything?
Yeah.
And they're like, we're good. You know, or whatever. Do you want me to say something? Like, I didn't want to have anything planned. Like, life's okay. Just stay away. Go do your thing. And you know, and studies even show that every time you get interrupted, it takes about 23 minutes to get back to where you were. And so I think one of the biggest things we see in agencies, there's a lack of respect for our time. And you know, but that comes with equal things, because if you are going to allow your service team to do what they do best and not interrupt them, you have to do what you do best and be intentional around it. There's both ways. Sometimes producers hear this and go, oh, so I don't have to come into the office and they get to do all the work and I'm good. I'm like, no, wait a second. Your responsibility is this. Your responsibility is results. And I tell you, one of the most alarming questions I'll ask agency leaders is, how many of your sales team hit your annual goals last year? And most of them, don't have them. And if they do, they go, well, I think, or I don't know. And it's like, well, what are you trying to do here? So it's back. The foundational thing that we see with the best producers, back to your initial question, is they understand it requires a team. And that takes, by the way, that's a process. We have agencies I've worked with for a year. We're still trying to like sort through some of that. What does it look like?
Wow. Yeah. So really it's a matter of letting everybody do their job, building that environment of trust between team members, which I think, whether that's the issue that's at hand, I feel like sometimes that's the message that gets sent. And maybe nobody in that interaction means it, but when somebody is like assumes that they should just go in, like a producer assumes that they should go in and do something that the service person is supposed to doing, it can erode a relationship very quickly, is kind of what I've seen. So I'm curious, because I feel like we have this conversation, and I've heard it, you know, from other people as well as within our own organization. But when we bring agents in, there's sometimes this thought process that we're just going to teach them how to do everything, so that if, you know, things fall apart or somebody's not available, they know how to like pitch in and get that certificate done. But then it kind of leads to this thing where they're like, oh, well, I'll just continue taking care of this stuff. Like, do you encounter that kind of thought process, like that training pattern that maybe creates that system?
That's a great question. So there's different thoughts on that. I hear you. You know, you talk to like an agency leader, and part of that, when you're starting an organization, you're going to wear more hats because you have to. And, you know, one of the things that I always say to an agency leader is, you know, your goal is to figure out which hat you can keep taking off, right? Like, how do you, back to the who, like, how do you get to a position where I can now take this hat off, and now I can take this hat off? So then I'm wearing a couple hats that I'm really good at and I love, and I get the best return on my time and money, right? With the producer, again, it depends on, there could be a lot of structures. I would just say this. I guess here's my initial thought when you were saying that, Olivia, is if we're figure they should know everything and they're doing certificates, is that the goal long term?
Right.
I mean, you know, like if you're saying, well, they'll do everything, so if they have to do a certificate, they can. I get that to a degree, maybe. But my goal for a producer of anybody in an agency is I want to help coach you to do what ultimately you're going to do best. And it's not certificates.
Right.
So I think, to me, this is probably going to offend a few people. I think some of it is it can be a cop out because we don't really know what or how to train them. So we'll just have them learn and do everything. I can throw them here and throw them here and throw them there. Now, part of it might be, well, maybe we're just going to see where they stick. There could be different, you know, depending on where they're at, and find out what they're really good at and make sure we put them in the right position. That would make more sense to me. But if I bring someone in to be an actual producer, and by the way, we always say the definition of a producer is one who produces. Then I want to do everything I can in my time to help them become a better producer. And I don't really have if I was I don't have the time or luxury to say, you spend some time figuring out how to do a certificate, where I could be talking about an account that we lost, why we lost it, or how I built a relationship here, or to take you with me on an appointment, or to go to a network event and show you some different areas of networking and some areas and talk you through a plan. That to me would be better use of time. So
emphasizing the right things right out the gate.
I mean, I want them to go someplace, and I want to help them grow. I mean, even in our sales meetings, most people that do sales meetings, which I think every agency should have sales meetings. The problem is most of them aren't very good. So they stop having them. It's like, well, everybody gets there. It's like, okay, we complain about the company and then something else. And then we talk about whatever. And then we're like, okay, let's go. To me, every interaction is an opportunity, just like a sales meeting. It's like coaching one-on-one. When you leave that appointment, that meeting, whatever it is, I want you to be a better person than when you got there.
Right.
I mean, so in our sales meeting, I think we should practice doing some of the things we're going to do in the real world. I think we should mastermind around lost sales. What did you learn from that? What's the change you're going to make? That's learning. You get better. Not, well, did you know that this carrier changed the commission from 13 to 11? Yeah, send me an email. Got it. Right?
Yeah.
Now, maybe what the impact is. I understand some of the things you got to talk about that. That's fine. You could have spend some time doing that. But I'm kind of going all around your question. I'm one of those. My mindset is leadership, and leadership is coaching. And I think it goes back to landing, the high performance teams. One of the things that happens, it's not even just a Saku ego thing. It's that it's faster initially to solve the problem yourself.
Yes.
Right. If my client has a question, right, and I'm the producer, and my service team isn't quite sure how to handle that, and that happens, right? That's real world.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Right? The easy thing is, oh, don't worry, Olivia, or whoever it is, I'll call them back and take care of it.
Yeah.
Now, my service person has learned nothing about that situation. Now, if I sat with her and said, join me on the call, or one of the things that I always tell people, and this is a different situation, is, Olivia, what would your response be before I reply? Allow you to think through it a little bit, right? To help you grow, because it's going to take a little more time up front, but guess what? 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 years, I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
My team knows.
Yeah.
So.
Fantastic. I feel like we could keep beating up on number one for a while. But,
are we still on number one?
We're still on number one, Brent. So gotta be more meat out there. So what was the second thing that you had take away there from that?
I just have number one. I don't have it. I'm just kidding. No, I got it.
I was just pretending to.
I was just pretending. I figured we could at least go an hour on number one. So. Number two is something we talked about a little bit, and I think producers do this in different ways. But number two, I went through the list of, like, there was, again, in our group at that meeting, we had about 30 that attended that first session. 29 out of 30 of these producers had some form of specialty or a niche. And, that always seems to come up. And, we talk about it at our initial camps, and we don't, no one has to do anything that we say, right? We don't force anybody. But it's one of those things where if you look at it, I mean, the common analogy, who makes more money, a heart specialist or a family practitioner? And you've heard me talk about this. Well, the heart specialist. Why? Well, because they have unique skill sets and knowledge that other people don't. And so it's not going to happen overnight. And people ask, well, how do I find a niche? Well, there's a lot of variables there. But ultimately, I want to start to figure out how to position myself that I am the expert in a certain area or areas.
Did you see in that specific part of the niches? I mean, did you see are people more niching in product specific things, or are they more niching in industry and then working in the whole vertical of insurance products? What makes the niche?
So it's a great question. The industry with commercial producers is always probably number one, right? And again, these are just some ideas. I work with a very large broker. I mean, you would know the name, very large, and a lot of people wouldn't like them, but I learned a lot in how they do things. There's a reason why, well, big agencies are big for a reason. What do? Well, they figured some of this stuff out. And they actually had they don't follow this verbatim, but they looked at a 40-30-30 model. that in their perfect world, they would have 40% of their book of business in like the number one niche. Then they would have 30% in niche 2. And sometimes they're related, right? They may be tied together in some ways. And then 30% would be like general accounts, meaning that it's a good account that I want. It doesn't fit a niche, but I want to ride it and it makes money and I'll do it, right? So give you some flexibility there. It's not like you have to be 100% here and it's all or nothing. And for younger producers, it's one of those things you got to figure it out for a while too. You might have 4 or 5 to start. I get that. But then you start to figure out, well, okay, this one makes more money. We have the right markets for this. I enjoy this more. There's more opportunity here. All those kind of things you begin to look at. But it just comes back to just being an expert and what you do in the area. And it's a difference maker. So was that the question you asked, by the way? I know I'm just really rambling.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, because you just hear it so often that, you know, like I hear some people say, well, you know, I niche in, you know, apartment complexes, you know, and that's what they do. And I scratch my head and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but in like this area, there's really not that many. Like, what do you mean? I mean, is that 40% of your book, or is it just that's a focus, or are we lip service to it? You know, that sort of thing.
Well, you got to be strategic, because I mean, part of it is, I mean, I jokingly say this, you know, when I was young in my 20s as a producer, I'm like, well, I should niche in bars. I love those. And you realize, okay, and again, and some people do.
That liquid liability.
Yeah, I mean, some people do. But I was like, okay, obviously it's not for the right reasons, and they're kind of a pain in the butt, and they're not going to be enough. There's not going to be enough commission or opportunity, right? So part of it is looking at, okay, what are some of the areas that I can, you know, it's not about just your passion. That's part of it. But what are some areas, you know, like we had a guy that did trucking, and I mean, and he did it for a certain reason. Trucking has high rates. We had people that have done, I mean, we had one of the ladies, does harbors. I mean, she does.
Yeah, I was trying to come up with this earlier, but so a good example is like flood insurance.
Yeah.
Okay. So like, you know, can you successfully niche? I mean, I know some there's actually one person out here that's probably in our group that is very successful in this area, but you know, like that's a good example. Yeah. Flood insurance is just one product. You know, do you see anybody that's successful in that type of area?
Yeah, we've seen, just to give you some examples. I haven't seen flood as much. I suppose you could. I've seen cyber. Actually, I did a lot of cyber before I left. And again, it's certain areas of cyber, and then it gets you into different accounts, right? Because you're an expert in there. The obvious one I see the most, we have agencies that do it, is work comp. I mean, about one line of business. They have the right work comp tools. It's a pain for most business owners. They learn enough about it to ask questions. There's a lot of experienced mod programs out there. So it's not just unique, but most people don't do it. And so you start talking to a business owner about a 3-year plan, and business owners care about profits and clients and employees, and you mention how that impacts them. They go, oh, now you have my attention, versus what? We have some really good rates on comp. Can I give you a quote? And, you know, and that's typically what we see out there. So it can be by industry. It can be by line of coverage, certainly. Could even be by geography to a degree. I came from an event, and that's probably been a month ago now, at least, that was about personal lines. It was all private client, high net worth clients. And I can tell you, some of these personal lines producers have way bigger book of business than a lot of commercial lines producers. And so their niche is high net worth. They understand how to insure those type of homes. And you've got to get there. I would just say this too, and this is niche, and this is also kind of goes into the elite program I talked about. One of the things that I often say from stage that usually gets a head nod, I said, do you hope to get better every year in this business? And most people are like, yeah, I hope I get better. I mean, you should. I said, shouldn't your clients? And, you know, yes, one of the things, and you hear us talk about 80/20, but I just had a producer I talked to this morning that owns the agency, is a producer and owns the agency. And his whole goal for last year was to get rid of about 60% of his book, like just hand it over. And
what a place to be.
Well, yeah. But here's the thing. It was 60% of the clients. It was only about 12% of his revenue.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's not stupid. And I said, what would it mean if you could free up 60% of your time? He's like, I could work on the top 40 and just dominate those puppies. I'm good at it. I've gotten better at it. And so that's one of the sacrifices a lot of, you know, most producers aren't willing to do. We have it all the time when we do camps. Like, well, I can't give up accounts. I put my blood, sweat, and tears in those. I'm like, I understand that. But if you actually look at it, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and you're stuck. And so what I would say is, why don't you just try to write one of those? I'm not even talking about jumbo. I'm talking like just nice. right? One of those, it would replace about 10 of those.
Mm-hmm.
So you never, don't ever fall behind, just stay even. And then once you get those, you're going to have more time and continue to grow. So I know I got off the specialty or the niche thing, but that's just it's part of it.
This is good stuff. So my thought has been, when it comes to niche driven business, and we've had different things over the years, but my thought has always been, it's easier for a new producer coming into the industry to build that knowledge set and that expertise if you give them a specific thing to focus on. Do you think there's any validity to that? It's been my argument for a long time, and I don't do sales training either. So I'm like completely speaking outside of my school.
So this is an interesting question because there's two thoughts on this. I'll ask you this. In fact, I do want to write something on this. I think it would be interesting from what I've learned in my 15 years in sales experience. I'll be 42 in January. Okay, so I still consider myself fairly young, although that's rapidly changing.
You're young.
Okay, thank you. I'll take it. But I thought if I started in January 1st, 2020 as a commercial producer, which I was, commercial alliance producer, what would I do? Right, what would I do? I would absolutely find one or two niches and spend all of my time there. All of it. Mm-hmm. I would not write, and then this is me. I'm not saying personal lines are bad. I would not write small commercial, and I would not write personal lines. Now, part of it say, well, you could do that because you've got experience in the industry. That's true. But it would still be a learning process for me going back. But for a newer producer, and again, depends on your background, I would maybe just be careful. Like I would just say something, again, this is just my thought. Every situation is unique and different. But I'm on your track, Olivia. I would start to talk about some of those areas very quickly. Of what they would be and where you have the greatest opportunity. And maybe in the midst of that, you're going to be learning some other stuff, part of that. But I think what happens in many cases that producers come in, they should be excited, and maybe they are, and they start off like, okay, and they start to work on anything and everything, and they grow to a decent size where they can feed themselves, and they, maybe they even get validated at some point. But then it's like, now what? I've got chaos around me. Like I've got personal lines and commercial lines and a dog manufacturer and a trucking account and this and this and this and this and this. And I don't know where to go now. And so I would definitely look for some areas of specialization. And I look at the best agencies, they're almost all specialized.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Fantastic. That's number 2.
Yeah. Hey, one other thing on this though, I just was thinking of North Carolina. And so who was I talking to? Was it, oh, shoot. It was Josh. So I don't want to call him out, but
Josh Lipstone?
Yeah.
All right.
So I want to share this because he actually left me. So it's funny because we were talking about niches. I wanted to bring this up because he's like, this makes sense. I should do this. And I was asking him some things that he wanted to do. And he was talking about vets. Right. I said, great. Okay. I said, have you looked at it? Well, yeah, this and this. I'm thinking too that I could write, if I wrote the vet, I could write the home and auto of the vet owner and those people, and maybe even some of their clients. And then I could write the pet insurance too. I thought that's great. That makes sense, right? That's kind of putting together. So then I sat there and I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, you're kind of going down the chain, right? What if you went up? Because what do you mean? I said, well, who supplies the food? Who supplies the equipment to the vet office? Oh, good question. I said, maybe you could look at, pet manufacturing equipment above it, right? Maybe you could look at supply chains above it. And he's like, oh. And so I think part of that from a production is we don't even think about it. We always kind of limit ourselves versus going, wait a second. If I write a vet, who are the people above them that I could get into? And so it's just a mindset thing, I think, in a lot of cases.
Yeah. And it's like, yes, except for like, how do you even, so like, okay, so, well, like, I don't even know how to
You're trying to figure out.
Yeah, so like, let's say, what's the name of a good dog food company, Olivia? Help me out.
Purina.
Perfect.
Blue Buffalo.
Blue Buffalo. Here we go. So like, let's say, okay.
Feed my dog.
How do you even start there, Brent? I mean, because like we are sort of self-limiting. I mean, in our own mind, because we're like, okay, what I understand right now and what puts food on the table right now is these things I understand, which is like that was perfect, down the funnel versus up. I mean, it's a networking thing. It's a connections thing. It's a where do we begin with that relationship?
So, I mean, it's a fair question. And by the way, Purina would probably be a tough one to go get, right? Pretty large company. They probably have some stuff in place. I get that. So here's, I mean, again, I'm just going to use an example, put myself in that place. I mean, if I'm there and let's say I write a number of vet offices. So I do have some, I've got some relationships there. I've got some expertise, understanding. I like the industry, all that kind of stuff. Well, sure. Okay. Hey, Mr. Vet, Mrs. Vet, where do you go for your, I mean, they have events just like we do in the insurance space.
Yeah.
Right. What's the next big trade show? Who's there? Right. I mean, and you just start asking questions around it. You would be amazed. We look at like just the Purina. If you go to a vet show, they probably have 87 vendors plus of different things that are all around the idea of pet care, pet food, pet service. I don't care what it is. I'm just saying that's going to be your niche. There are a number of options. And then you start having conversations. And then again, this is just me. Now, I like to speak and train, but here's something. I had to give you one example of this too. I know we're spending time on specialization. It's important. We had one of our clients who recently sold a year ago, and he was in his early 60s, and he sold, I'll just say this, very, 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 very successfully. Okay. At one point, he had 2 offices. They had about 50 employees. And he was $2.5 million in revenue. In a period of time, he doubled his revenue. He went from 2 offices to 1, and his employees shrunk by about 40%. Not because he fired them. It was a long play, right? And his entire specialization was nonprofits. That's what he did. And he shared at one of our events to the entire group, just kind of ideas and philosophies and how you continue to grow and learn. Like, you don't write the biggest nonprofit on day one, but you start to learn how they're thinking. What are they thinking? What are their biggest needs? And he said, then I went to start to speak at their events, right? As kind of one of a trusted advisor. And he goes, then I realized the best thing to do is not to speak, although that's good. What's really great is to be a facilitator on a panel. So then I bring up a nonprofit, an attorney or whatever it is, certain experts, and I facilitate the whole thing. So I lead this. People watch. Guess who they talk to for expertise? Me. And it's all about how do I begin? And this is a long process and a niche, but how do I begin to position myself in the place that I have the best chance to win? That's really what it gets down to.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's great.
Are you ready for number 3 now?
I am chomping at the bit.
I'm excited.
I mean, we are, I'm ready. Let's go.
We're almost out of time. So one of the things that I've been guilty of is I like to pontificate. So I apologize for that.
We all do.
So the last one I have, and this is kind of broad sense, but the $3.5 million revenue producer. So I got a chance to talk to him a little bit. And I said, and I always ask the one thing question. I love it. It puts people, have to give me an answer. What's the one thing above all else that you would tell another producer of how you got to this level? And he said, I've never seen myself as an insurance agent. And I said, okay, explain. He goes, I have always in my mind, since I started my track, I am always a business consultant. And he goes, I know that's mindset stuff, but it's huge, because from the very beginning of time, when I've started to make this ascent, I realized people don't need me for my quotes. They need me for my advice. And most producers never position themselves that way. They try to, they kind of say they do, they give it lip service. But, and again, he's business insurance. I know it'd be different from personal lines, but as we even talk about in our camps, there's really 3 things that clients care about in the business side of things. We can talk about personal lines, but in business, whether it's benefits or commercial lines, they care about their profits, they care about their employees, and they care about their clients. And so when you begin to ask questions around that, he goes, insurance just became my mode of how I would actually serve them. But I would walk in and just ask everything about their business. It actually goes back to specialization. People don't care that you know about insurance. People don't care that your carrier had a new endorsement that's shining. They don't. They don't care. You care as a producer because it looks cool. Like, ooh, we got this new cyber endorsement. You know what they care about? Their business. Now, how that endorsement may apply to their business long-term, they may care about. But if I came in and said, hey, Landon, I got to tell you about this new cyber endorsement we have. This is really cool.
Yeah. That's fantastic. No, it reminds me. I mean, one of the niches that we work on is group homes. It's one of the ones that we deal with. And you telling that story brings up a really unique story that I had. Not really that unique, but it speaks to what you're saying. The business owner had been with this one insurance agency a very long time. And they reached out to me through someone that I wrote previous. So it was referral based. But then when I went and talked with them, I asked a bunch of questions about the business, what they're doing, where they're headed, and all that kind of stuff. And I had a few questions about their current insurance plan. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like it's adequate? Do you feel like it's servicing you well? And man, she went on a tear about how I have not been offered anything since day one. Mm-hmm. I have no idea if my business is still insured correctly because no one tells me. I just sign the papers every year and move on. And this is not a small account. Yeah. I mean, up until this past year, this is probably the largest account I've written. And so I said, well, let me look at it, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, I come to her and I added EPLI insurance. I added flood insurance for her property. And she said, well, at least he's adding something. And she ended up writing, and we probably bound an extra 10, I think it was 15,000 in premium, to her account, just because we offered the stuff that she needed.
Yeah. Go ahead. I mean,
I was just going to say, I mean, it's just taking the time to listen to people and positioning yourself to say, hey, EPLI insurance is going to be because, you're talking about someone that might file a lawsuit because of XYZ that you said you've done in the past. Is that occurring now, or is it in the past? You said, this was probably 10 years ago. Like, well, this is how you protect against that, and you sort of show her that.
Yeah. You just reminded me of one of our camps. I had a guy, we were kind of going through part of this process. One of the things I think the best agents and producers moving forward they're great storytellers. They understand it's about telling a story, right? Yeah. And we always know facts tell, stories sell. We've heard that for years, but how do you do it? And so he gave a quick example of how he was trying to get his client. Now, he was one that he currently had, but trying to get his client to buy cyber insurance. And he knew it was important. I mean, it was like obvious. Well, they'd never bought it. And guess what? They had a huge cyber claim. I think it ended up being like about $350,000 that the company paid out of pocket that he could have protected, right? And so we got done with it, and he was kind of sharing that. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, do you now have a story that others would listen to? And he goes, oh my God, yeah. And so oftentimes what would happen is, and again, this is just a quick thought process, is you would come in and say, Landon, one of the things that we've seen really important for businesses like yours is cyber liability protection, right? And I start telling you why it's important and the different stuff that we're going to do and the limits and all that. And maybe even say, do you have it, right? Whereas if I came in and said something like, Landon, tell me currently how your current cyber protection is structured. Be like, what?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, or it could be anything from how is your current annual risk review conducted? Or I could ask all these type of questions. I don't want to attack someone. I just want to ask questions around to get you to think. And if, let's say for cyber, you would say, I don't really know. And I say, it's interesting. Recently working with a business owner similar to you, and you tell the story. Mm-hmm. And now, again, you got to collect stories. That's one of the things, too, is you got to collect stories. That's why having team meetings and working with groups is great, because I always tell people they don't all have to be yours. They just have to be real.
Yeah.
Steal them. And people will lean in. They'll be like, what? I never heard that before. And now you've got their attention. Now you can offer stuff. And by the way, Landon, you said that was one of your biggest accounts last year?
Yeah.
You should do more of those.
You're right. I should. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I need
the advice is free here today, as you can tell.
Yeah, I need to look up at their suppliers and see who's supplying what they need. That's all good. That's good. Well, Brent, man, number 3. Let me just make sure we categorize it correctly. Position yourself as the consultant. Is that a fair subject line for number 3?
Yeah, I would just say right. Actually, what I put on here on my notes was the best don't quote.
Okay.
But yeah, it's positioned as a business consultant, not a quoting, not a quoter and floater, is the term we like to use.
Got it. Yep. Awesome. Well, we are pretty much out of time. Just like that.
We could go for another hour.
How'd we do? I mean, I feel like these are just rolling, man. We're able to get through these things and bring a lot of value. It's all good stuff.
It's fun.
I still had my notes from when we were in Florida.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That I read all the time.
That's
I try and fill in all the acronyms.
Yeah, good luck.
What's TP? I missed an E.
Oh, TP. Yeah, it's TEPE. It's time, energy, problems, employees, and expenses.
Employees.
Nice.
So
how did I miss employees?
I don't know, but we look at 80-20, and that's what we figure. We look at agencies and look from the outside, and we see that 70% of their time, their energy, their problems, their employees, and their expenses go to clients that produce maybe 20% of the revenue.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect.
Fantastic.
Okay. I'm gonna wrap up with 2 questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be fast, I guess.
These are quick and easy ones because,
right.
well, I guess they maybe aren't. But do you prefer audiobooks or actual books? Like, are you a reader or a listener? Or
my quick answer: I prefer to read them.
Okay.
I like to listen, and then if it's one I really like, then I'll buy the book and read it and take notes
and highlight it. Okay. Oh, good plan. I always do it the other way. Maybe I need to reverse my process.
You can pick Audible at 1.5 speed, so it flips through it quick.
Yeah,
I don't waste my time.
I'm gonna have to start doing that because I'm not gonna. I have too many books on there already. What was the last book you read?
Good question, because I read too many at one time.
Me too.
I'm trying to think of one I just finished. I'm probably going to be let's see, what was the last one? Actually, to be honest, the last book I read was 80-20 Rule by Richard Koch, which of course I was preparing for stuff. But hold on. Can I give you one of my favorite books?
Yes, sure.
Yes.
The Road Less Stupid is my favorite books ever.
Oh, do I have that? I think I have that written down.
No one knows about that book. That's why I like to share it. The Road Less Stupid.
Still on my list.
Consider it written down. I did not have that on my list.
Keith Cunningham. And by the way, last thing on this, if you do want an audio book, it's always better when it's read by the author, right? And
Absolutely.
this guy is worth the audio book and the book. The audio book, I think he's a Texas guy, and he's got this slow drawl. He talks like this, and he gets to the end of each chapter. And so part of the whole book is there's like different areas of thinking about your business critically. It's really good. And then he'll say, does your business do this? If your business would talk, what would it say? And then he'll get to the end and he'll just go, now go think. You'll thank me later. And that's the end of each chapter. It's the best part. You're like, oh, that's good.
That's good. Hey, I think impersonations is another thing you should go after, Brent. Yes. I think you're excellent at that.
Acronyms, impersonations.
I love it. Brent, where do they connect with you? Where do you like to hang out?
My favorite social media place is LinkedIn. So just go to LinkedIn and find me, Brent Kelly. If you want to look at our Sitkins stuff, just go to sitkins.com. It's sitkins.com, and all of our stuff's there.
And his podcast.
Oh, my podcast. I should. Yeah, I forgot. I just recorded the Agent Leader podcast. The Agent Leader podcast. Check that out. Yeah.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us. Brent, thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right. See you guys.
See y'all.